Hello everyone and welcome to the video. I've been meaning to make a video about this topic for a while now, but it seems as though the time never really comes. So I just decided to place the record button and give you guys my raw, pure opinion about Yu-Gi-Oh! And the whole card game genre in general and be as transparent as I can with what I have to say here. So for those of you who don't know, I like making content about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but I also play other card games on and off during the past couple of years. For example, I've been playing Hearthstone every now and then, and I actually got back into it and I'm having a blast, by the way. It's very fun. And I've been also playing games like MTG Arena and Pokemon on and off for the past couple of years, so I do like card games in general, and I would like to give you guys my opinion about it because I believe they share some similarities that are kind of problematic, as well as some differences that I believe are also worth mentioning here. I'm primarily gonna focus on Master Duel, of course, because it's the main game that I play, but I would also like to discuss the other ones as well. I'm gonna kick things off talking about Yu-Gi-Oh!'s game state, both in TCG, OCG, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, of course, and then I'm gonna blend the two topics together when the time comes and essentially dive into the other card games genre. So let's get into it, I guess. For Yu-Gi-Oh! There are a couple of problems that I want to discuss that make the game both worse and actually more boring, at least for me. And I'm gonna start off with the meta, especially in TCG, where there are only 3 primary decks doing anything there. Malice, Mitsurugi, and Raizio are dominating the whole meta now, and people play mostly these 3 decks. And whenever there's someone trying to build like a rogue deck and compete with them, for example, Memento, Blue Eyes, Murmeo, Crystron, it just doesn't work, bro. It doesn't matter how creative you are, the first 3 options are just gonna be better. Even though there are some great players who try to come up with unique ideas and try out some roguish style decks, it just never really works out because most of the decks don't receive support every other set, right? For example, Crystron is an archetype that I really like, and even though it's actually pretty good, because it doesn't receive new support every couple of sets, it just cannot perform as well as the top tier decks, right? And it feels like Konami is just trying to push a couple of decks and leave the rest to just kind of disappear and become less powerful. And it feels like we have to deal with something new every couple of sets, and the new support that comes out for the decks make it better and better to the point where you're forced to kind of play one of these decks if you want to even compete on a top level, which kills the majority of creative ideas that people might have because they just can't play their archetypes. They have to play something that's top tier currently. And what happens is we're basically getting a new archetype. That archetype becomes top tier, then we have a bunch of support coming for it, so it's still good and relevant for the next couple of sets, and then we have to nerf it because it's just too good, and then people stop playing it, and then there's a new archetype, and the whole process just repeats over and over again. I know a lot of people have a problem with that, including me, because I'm someone who likes to have fun with decks and kind of make them as good as they can be, and that's it. I don't really want to play the top tier best option just because Konami said so. And for the past couple of sets, the game feels exactly like this. This is what you're gonna play because Konami said so. And we're just going back and forth and we're repeating the same process, and people have no other choice but to play whatever Konami says. And that's something that I very much dislike about it. And whoever wants to compete at the top level, they're just forced to play whatever's new and whatever's best because Konami just doesn't give them any other opportunities to do anything else with previous and older sets. There are some exceptions to these rules, for example with Blue Eyes and Crystron, but for the most part this is how the game functions. Which now leads me to the topic of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel's meta, which I believe to be actually a lot more fun than TCG and OCG, funnily enough. Some of the best decks you can play in the game by the time of recording this video are some like Crystron, Memento, Blue Eyes, and there's still the occasional Fitzman Snake Eye player, but it's still a little more fun and diverse and interesting. That is until we receive Raizio, Mitsurugi, and Malice in the game. Things will probably be similar to TCG after that. But still there are some differences because usually they kind of limit the archetype's capabilities when it comes down to Master Duel because they kind of know how to control it a little bit better now that they've seen it in TCG, which means usually we're not gonna receive such a broken version of the deck. And that is one of the reasons actually why I like playing Master Duel. It just feels a little more convenient and nice, but we still see the occasional tier 0 meta in the game, so I don't want to get my hopes too high. And now the other problem that I have with Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've been very vocal about it is the fact that we just don't have new players as much as the other card games. And there are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, I believe that the card game genre is kind of slowing down and there are not that many players getting into it in general. But there's also the second thing where Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a little too difficult to learn and play because the decks are just so complicated and we don't have any older modes to play, unfortunately. I've said this many times and I'm gonna say it again. If we receive an older format, that will make players kind of hop into the game because it's gonna be easier to learn. It's not gonna be the game ending in like 2 turns and nobody understanding anything about it. And I'm just tired of seeing people who haven't played the game getting into it and just starting with the rank system and just don't know what to do, and they're kind of just overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that they need to learn, so they just quit the game. This is such a horrible way to present the game, and no wonders we don't have any new players, right? Even though other card games have a similar problem, at least you get to play more than 2 or 3 turns, bro. Like, it's just insane how fast the game ends in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that leads me to my third problem that I believe every card game actually has, and that is power creep. Now, I've been very vocal about power creep for a while now in many of my videos, but one thing that I want to mention here is the fact that power creep makes it so that people people are less interested in the game in general, and I'm gonna tell you why right now. First of all, power creep makes the game more complex, which can be an issue a little bit, especially with Yu-Gi-Oh being such a fast-paced game. We also have the problem that new players just can't get into it because it's too difficult, and on top of that we have the third problem, which is basically the fact that every archetype can do pretty much the same, which means that many archetypes lose their identity because they're just summoning either generic monsters, or every archetype can just negate or pop or do something like the other ones can, so it feels a little bit boring. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this is a problem with particularly Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a problem with the whole card game genre, because usually these games go through many different sets of cards, and at some point combining a couple of sets of cards makes it more powerful and it just becomes power creep. And of course, in order to sell a product, you need to make it better than the previous one, which also causes some trouble there. And you gotta find a way to kind of address that problem. For example, Hearthstone has a rotation where cards go into the wild mode, Magic has a similar thing where cards go into the historic mode, and Master Duke has a ban list that is supposed to kind of kill some of the OP cards there. The problem is none of these systems actually do enough, and power creep is still a big issue in every card game. Even though we have a way to address the problems, Konami, for example, doesn't take drastic measures to fix some things. They're more so gonna limit or ban some of the cards to make it less consistent, and that's it. But of course, there have been some times in which Konami made the right decision. For example, banning Baron and also Apollousa. I feel like these are two cards that don't need to exist at all in the game because they're too generic. And it's not like I dislike cards like these, it's just the fact that when you have these couple of cards like Baron, Apollousa, IP, and SP, every deck basically loses their identity because they just summon the same guys. The endboard pieces are always somewhat the same, which is a problem, and I would like to see them address these problems even further and ban some like IP, SP, and basically get rid of all of the generically OP cards that just take over the game. However, I would also like to talk about some of the bad decisions that Konami has made with the ban list as well. One thing that I don't understand to this day is why are we straight up banning a card that is problematic for the meta that belongs to an older archetype instead of just making an errata so that it functions only for the particular archetype. And yes, I'm talking about Burning Abyss and Beatrice here. It's so bizarre to me the fact that they just straight up kill a deck that they don't care about just to get rid of one card where they can easily just errata it and fix the whole problem. And this doesn't make any sense to me. And oh boy, there are other examples of this as well. For example, with Yubel in the Sacred Beast archetype, why do we still have the Sacred Beast cards limited in Master Duel when the deck is not even good and Yubel is not even that powerful as well? The only reason why they limit these cards is because they want to address Yubel indirectly, which is just so annoying. Like a couple of events ago, I played Sacred Beast on stream and we had a blast. It was so fun, but every time I queue up, I keep asking myself one question: why does this tier 15 deck still have limited cards? It just makes no sense. And we even have a worse situation with Burning Abyss and Crystron, and it's just so annoying for everyone involved with these decks. And the problem here is again power creep, because they keep on releasing better and better cards, and at some point they just need to address them, and this is what happens with some of them. And other card games have the same problems, as I said, for example like Magic and Hearthstone. And like, dude, for example Hearthstone, I have a very fun story about it. In the early days of Hearthstone, we actually had a very interesting series from a lot of content creators regarding custom cards, where people just submit their custom cards and we see if we're gonna receive something like them. And it was lots of fun because you see some unique ideas that are just either too crazy or too weird to be released. And funnily enough, years later, I am playing this game now, and I've been seeing some of these custom cards literally in the game, and I'm like, what the hell? Some of these are broken. Power creep has become so crazy that some of these custom cards that I was thinking about years ago are now actually true, and they're absolutely insane. And this is so absurd that it's just hilarious. Like, imagine creating a custom Yu-Gi-Oh card 10 years ago. You would never create a card with like 4 different effects in it. It's just insane how many effects some of these new cards have. But yeah, that's my opinion about the state of Yu-Gi-Oh and other card games in general, and I've been seeing other content creators in every card game having similar thoughts and similar problems, which goes to show that they're actually true and need to be addressed, of course. Let me know your thoughts about the topic in the comments below. Also, feel free to check out more content or like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next video.